Welcome to Now Documentary. On July 7th, 1995, 39-year-old Gao Yuwu stood at a wedding altar for the second time. His bride was Nai Meizi, 11 years younger than him. Surrounded by blessings from family and friends, Gao Yuwu wore a smile of genuine happiness. At that moment, he could never have imagined that this seemingly beautiful marriage would last only 4 years and 4 months. On Saturday, November 13th, 1999, 32-year-old Nai Meizi was stabbed to death in her own home in broad daylight. At the time of the attack, their 2-year-old child was also present at the scene. The case caused a major public outcry. Despite a massive police effort, the perpetrator was never identified. It was not until 26 years later, just after noon on October 31st, 2025, 69-year-old Gao Yuwu suddenly received a phone call from the Aichi Prefectural Nishi police station. On the line, a detective asked him to come to the station confidentially, saying there was an important matter to discuss. Gao Yuwu explained that he already had an appointment scheduled for 1 p.m. and asked whether the meeting could be postponed. The detective, however, told him to cancel all afternoon plans immediately and come as soon as possible. Although the detective revealed very little over the phone, Gao Yuwu already sensed something. Could it be? He did not dare to think further. He hastily cancelled his schedule and headed out. 26 years had passed. Too many disappointments had already left him exhausted. He had no idea what awaited him. The tension in his chest made him increasingly restless. At around 2 p.m., Gao Yuwu arrived at the police station. He was escorted into a small room resembling an interrogation room. The officer inside was wearing a uniform similar to that of forensic personnel, someone who appeared to be responsible for DNA analysis or related work. The first words the officer spoke were, "Mr. Gao Yuwu, we're sorry to have kept you waiting for 26 years. An investigator will explain everything to you in detail shortly." After saying this, the officer bowed and turned to leave. When Gao Yuwu saw a detective, he recognized he could no longer contain his emotions. Before the detective even spoke, Gao Yuwu said, "I feel like I'm about to cry." The detective responded in a firm, steady voice. "We've troubled you over the past year. Tonight, we will arrest the suspect." When Gao Yuwu asked who the killer was, the detective deliberately held back, turning the question around instead. "It's someone you know. Who do you think it is?" Gao Yuwu paused briefly, then answered without hesitation, "A high school classmate." The detective smiled faintly. "That's right." Today's story takes place in Nagoya, Japan, a city that serves as the capital of Aichi Prefecture and stands alongside Tokyo and Osaka as one of the country's 3 major metropolitan centers. The protagonist of our story, Nai Meizi, was born in 1967. Her family was not well off. When she was in middle school, her parents divorced, and she went on to live with her mother. During high school, Nai Meizi attended Nagoya Commercial High School. After graduating, she did not go on to university. Instead, she found work as an assistant at a dental clinic. Several years later, Nai Meizi changed jobs and joined a real estate company that was a subsidiary of a well-known Japanese machinery manufacturer. The salary and benefits were significantly better than her previous position as a dental assistant. More importantly, it was there that she met a colleague, 11 years her senior, Gao Yuwu. At the time, Gao was already a mid-level manager at the company and had just come out of an unhappy marriage. Seeing each other daily at work, the two quickly developed a romantic relationship. On July 7, 1995, witnessed by family and friends, they happily entered into marriage. 2 years later, in 1997, their son, Hang Ping, was born. In order to better care for the child, Unmasking resigned from her job and became a full-time homemaker. As a first-time mother, she was meticulous and deeply devoted to her son. She kept a diary filled with her love for the child, recording both the joy and anxiety of motherhood, as well as the surprises brought by her son's growth. In one entry, she wrote, "Such a lovely child, so beautiful. Now weaned, barely drinks water during the day. It makes me a little sad." Gao Yuwu's younger sister later recalled Unmasking as a kind and caring person who was deeply attentive to her family. She said that while there are many kinds of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships in the world, Unmasking had an especially good relationship with her own mother-in-law. They often cooked together while chatting in the kitchen. When Gao's father complained of back pain, Unmasking would cheerfully suggest, "Then let's go see a chiropractor together." In the sisters' eyes, Unmasking was always gentle and easygoing. 1 month before the incident, in October 1999, everything still appeared peaceful. Hang Ping had just celebrated his 2nd birthday, healthy and cheerful. Gao Yuwu's career was stable, and he had just purchased a new car. Although Unmasking had lightly scratched it due to her less than confident driving skills, she was still very happy about owning a car. Even more exciting was the fact that they were about to have a new home. The couple had set their sights on a larger apartment and planned to have Unmasking's mother move in with them. Gao Yuwu had already signed the purchase contract. Once their current lease ended in March of the following year, the family, parents, child, and grandmother would move in together. Overjoyed, Unmasking traveled with her husband and son to Tokyo Disneyland in October. She also planned a 2-day trip with her family to Lake Biwa in Shiga Prefecture on the 16th and 17th of the following month. In the photographs, she smiled brightly. No one could have imagined that just 1 month later, a nightmare would suddenly descend. On Saturday, November 13, 1999, although it was the weekend, Saturdays were the busiest workdays for Gao Yuwu as a real estate employee. Early that morning, Unmasking prepared breakfast for the family. During the meal, she told her husband that their son's cold had not improved and that he had a slight fever, so she planned to take him to a nearby pediatric clinic later that morning. At around 9 a.m., after breakfast, Gao Yuwu put on his suit and left for work as usual. Unmasking did not leave immediately after he departed. Instead, she first called a neighbor who lived upstairs on the 3rd floor, a young woman she was very close to. The neighbor also had a 2-year-old daughter around Hang Ping's age. The two mothers often exchanged parenting advice and belonged to the same close-knit mothers group. That day, Unmasking called to ask whether she could borrow the neighbor's husband's car. A few days earlier, she had accidentally scratched her newly purchased car, which was currently being repaired. The neighbor said she would need to discuss it with her husband first. After that phone call, Unmasking's movements became a mystery. Logically, she should have taken her son to the pediatric clinic. However, hospital records later showed that she did not arrive there with Hang Ping until 11:10 a.m. What happened between 9 a.m. and 11:10 a.m. remains unknown. At around 9:30 a.m., a mail carrier arrived at their apartment door, Unit 201. After ringing the doorbell and knocking with no response, the carrier left a delivery notice. This suggested 2 possibilities. Either Unmasking was home but did not hear the bell and knocking, or she had already left with her child, but where she went was unknown. At 10:20 a.m., the neighbor from the 3rd floor called Unmasking for the first time, but no one answered. She tried again at 10:40 a.m. with the same result. This indicated that by 10:20 a.m., no one was home. If Naimazi had gone straight to the clinic, it would have taken only 5 minutes by bicycle or 15 to 20 minutes on foot to get there. Even at a slow pace, she should have arrived by 10:40 a.m., but she did not. In an era before widespread surveillance cameras, no one knew where Naimazi had been before going to the hospital, or whether anything unusual had happened. She was last seen at around 11:40 a.m. that day. A neighbor was cleaning his car in the apartment parking lot and noticed Naimazi passing by with Hang Ping. Normally polite, she did not greet him and seemed to be in a hurry. Shortly after noon, 2 neighbors reported hearing unusual noises. One said there was a loud sound from Naimazi's apartment, like a heavy object hitting the floor. Not long after, they heard someone running hurriedly down the stairs. Between 12:30 p.m. and 2 p.m., the third-floor neighbor called Naimazi's home 3 more times, but no one answered. At around 2:30 p.m., the landlady, who lived in the building, was picking persimmons from her yard to share with tenants. She started on the 3rd floor and then went down to Unit 201 on the 2nd floor. After ringing the doorbell with no response, she was about to hang the fruit on the doorknob when she noticed the door was slightly ajar. When she pushed it open, the sight of a large pool of blood in the entryway shocked her. Looking further in, she saw someone lying on the floor, upper body in the living room, legs still in the hallway. Terrified, she ran back home to fetch her husband. When he entered the apartment, he found Naimazi lying face down at the entrance between the living room and hallway. She was already dead. Even more shocking, near the dining table, 2-year-old Hang Ping was playing with his toys, seemingly unaware of what had just happened. The landlady's husband immediately picked up the child and took him to the 3rd-floor neighbor's apartment, while his wife called the police. After describing the scene, the 3rd-floor neighbor also called Gao Yuwu. Unaware of the full situation, she said there was blood everywhere around Naimazi, and that it looked like she might have collapsed after vomiting blood. At 2:50 p.m., Gao Yuwu returned to the apartment. Ambulances and police cars had already arrived, and the building was cordoned off with yellow tape. Forensic personnel and officers moved in and out of Unit 201, but no one told him what had happened. Later, Gao Yuwu recalled that he kept thinking his wife must have suddenly collapsed from illness. He wondered how a 2-year-old child could grow up without a mother, never imagining the truth. Eventually, a forensic investigator told him that his wife had stab wounds and was likely murdered. To better understand the case, it is necessary to examine the crime scene. Naimazi's apartment was located at number 5 Dosei-te in Nishi Ward, Nagoya. It was a 3-story residential building with 2 units on each floor. Naimazi and her family lived in Unit 201 on the 2nd floor. Regarding the interior, a floor plan has circulated online for many years. This diagram was first published in the November 14th morning edition of the Chunichi Shimbun, the day after the murder. At the time, reporters were not permitted to enter the scene, so the layout was reconstructed based on second-hand descriptions. As a result, some details in that diagram are inaccurate. Upon opening the front door, one entered a traditional Japanese genkan entryway. On the right side of the hallway were a storage room, bathroom, wash area, and toilet. In the upper right corner was a guest room. The left side of the hallway was the focal point of the crime. At the time of the incident, the kitchen door was closed, while the living room door was open. Naimazi collapsed at the entrance to the living room. According to Gao Yuwu's later account, his wife was nearsighted. When she went out, she wore contact lenses. At home, she wore framed glasses. After being suddenly attacked, the severely injured Naimazi struck her forehead against the floor, knocking her glasses askew. She lay face down at an angle, with about 1/3 of her body inside the living room, while her legs extended into the hallway. The medical examiner concluded that Naimazi had been dead for 2 to 3 hours when she was discovered. Combined with witness statements from nearby residents, investigators estimated the time of death to be between 12 p.m. and 12:30 p.m. Between the living room and the kitchen was a sliding door, which could be pulled closed to separate the two spaces. Inside the kitchen, blood spatter covered nearly everything, from the sink to the stove, from the ceiling to the cabinets and down to the floor. On the dining table were cups, bowls, plates, and children's utensils, most of them stained with blood. What made the scene even more heartbreaking was the fact that 2-year-old Hang Ping had been sitting in a child's seat behind the dining table, playing with his toys as the attack unfolded. He witnessed the violence firsthand, yet at his age, he could not comprehend what was happening. Even when his mother's blood splattered onto the tableware in front of him, he continued playing, unaware of the horror surrounding him. Forensic investigators noticed a partially consumed probiotic drink on the dining table. According to Gao Yuwu, he did not recall ever buying that brand, leading police to believe it had been brought by the perpetrator. One unusual detail was that the drink had not been consumed with a straw. Liquid had spilled directly from the opening, suggesting it was drunk straight from the bottle. Based on the plastic code on the packaging, investigators determined the drink was sold near the Nishiyamagawa area. Given that there was a 2-year-old child in the home, some detectives speculated that the perpetrator may have posed as a door-to-door probiotic drink salesperson to get Naimisi to open the door. Gao Yuwu, however, disagreed with this theory. He described his wife as extremely cautious. If someone rang the doorbell while she was in the kitchen, she would usually step out onto the balcony, from where she could clearly see the visitor. If it appeared to be a salesperson, she would dismiss them without opening the door. In addition to the probiotic drink, investigators also found a half-peeled mandarin orange and half a bowl of instant noodles on the table. Gao Yuwu said his wife was meticulous by nature and would never leave unfinished food on the table. This led police to believe that when the doorbell rang, Naimisi was likely in the middle of eating. Caught off guard by an unexpected visitor at that hour, she may have hastily set the bowl down and gone to check the front door. Bloodstains in the entryway revealed 2 different blood types, allowing investigators to distinguish between the victim and the attacker. Police theorized that Naimisi looked through the peephole and saw that the visitor was a woman carrying what appeared to be a probiotic drink. Letting down her guard, she opened the door, only for the attacker to immediately pull out a knife and stab her. Caught completely off guard, Naimisi was struck first and quickly lost the advantage. She fought desperately while retreating deeper into the apartment. During the struggle, the attacker relentlessly stabbed toward her neck, leaving large amounts of cast-off blood spatter on the walls. The confrontation moved from the entryway, through the hallway, and into the kitchen and living room. Cups, bowls, and condiment containers on the dining table were all stained with blood, and several items had been knocked to the floor, indicating a violent struggle. In the kitchen, blood spatter cascaded across the ceiling and the cabinets beneath the sink like a waterfall, a chilling testament to the attacker's brutality. Severely wounded, Naimisi attempted to escape, but ultimately collapsed at the entrance to the living room. Investigators documented multiple stab wounds on her body. Her left palm had been deeply slashed, a clear defensive injury. The most severe wound was on the right side of her neck, causing massive blood loss. After examining every knife in the apartment, police confirmed that none were missing, indicating that the attacker had brought the weapon with her. Based on the blood evidence, investigators determined that the attacker was a female with type B blood. Shoe prints in the entryway showed the attacker wore size 24 women's shoes. The tread pattern matched a Korean-made brand that was popular in Japan at the time, making it extremely difficult to trace sales records. The final physical clue was a trail of blood leading from the front door, out of the apartment, and down the stairs, suggesting the attacker had been injured and was unable to stop the bleeding. Following the blood trail, police traced it through nearby paths to Dosei Park, about 500 meters away, where the blood abruptly stopped. Investigators believe the attacker likely washed her hands and stopped the bleeding there. At around 9:30 p.m., forensic teams completed their initial examination, and Gao Yuwu was allowed to return to the apartment. Recalling that moment, he said that, although Nai Meizi was already dead, the television inside was still playing a cheerful variety show. He could not understand why such misfortune had struck only his family. As a husband, he stood helplessly as his wife's body was sealed in a black bag and carried downstairs into a police vehicle. There was nothing he could do but stand there in a daze. He could not remember who led him to the third-floor neighbor's apartment. When he saw his son Hang Ping, he found the 2-year-old laughing and playing happily with a girl of the same age. The child had no awareness of what had happened, no trace of sadness. The innocent laughter of children inside the apartment stood in grotesque contrast to the blood-soaked crime scene downstairs. The surreal nature of it all left Gao Yuwu completely numb. He did not even have time to grieve. That night, Hang Ping stayed with the neighbor on the 3rd floor. Gao Yuwu was driven away by his sister and brother-in-law, who feared he might not be able to withstand the shock. At 10 p.m., while sitting in their car, Gao Yuwu heard the murder being reported on NHK radio. Only then did reality finally set in. In his mind, he quietly said to himself, "I know."
Mama, どうして死んじゃった? Mama, ひあんたちゃんが喧嘩して死んだの。喧嘩して。ママが死んじゃった。これの写真撮ったよ。
In the days that followed, Gao Yuwu's life was completely upended. He moved back to his mother's home with his son, Hang Ping. After taking 2 weeks off, he forced himself to pull together and returned to work on December 1st. Although he tried to function normally, the memory of his wife's murder and the horrific crime scene remained deeply etched in his mind and refused to fade. From time to time, he returned alone to the rented apartment, hoping to sort through his wife's belongings and scrub away the bloodstains. But every time he wiped the walls, the thought that this blood had once flowed through the woman he loved would overwhelm him, and he would break down in tears. Plagued by chronic insomnia, he visited Nagoya University every 2 weeks to receive psychological counseling from a university professor. Only after 18 months of continuous therapy did he begin to slowly emerge from his grief. Because the apartment was an active crime scene, police officers frequently entered and exited to collect evidence. Many of Gao Yuwu and his wife's personal belongings also remained untouched. As a result, for 3 years after the murder, he did not terminate the lease. He would occasionally go back to clean, wipe away bloodstains, and gradually move items out. He initially planned to give up the apartment when the next lease period ended, but an unexpected discovery completely changed his mind. 3 years after the crime, a new forensic team returned to the apartment to re-examine the scene. During that visit, Gao Yuwu heard something shocking from a bloodstain pattern analyst. The analyst was studying the blood traces in the entryway when Gao, out of curiosity, struck up a conversation. The analyst explained that the bloodstains pointed in different directions, indicating that the perpetrator had been standing at the door, looking out through the peephole. At that moment, the attacker likely noticed someone nearby and hesitated, thinking, "What should I do? What should I do?" While waiting at the door, blood continued to drip from the attacker's hand, leaving the distinctive stains on the floor. This revelation stunned Gao Yuwu. Until then, he had believed that all the blood in the entryway belonged to his wife. He immediately sought confirmation from the investigators handling complex cases. Police confirmed that some of the blood indeed belonged to the perpetrator, but emphasized that this was information only the offender would know, and therefore could not be disclosed publicly. That confirmation was a turning point. Gao Yuwu realized that the apartment might still contain crucial clues he had never known about. Despite the high rent, 90,000 yen per month, a significant financial burden, he made a firm decision to keep renting the apartment until the killer was caught. From that moment on, His life revolved around two priorities. The first was raising his son Hang Ping. The second was pursuing the killer at any cost. Although Hang Ping was helped by his grandparents, Gao Yuwu often insisted on doing things himself. Working at a real estate company, he typically returned home around 8 p.m., then bathed his 2-year-old son, taught him to brush his teeth, and showed him how to use chopsticks, taking on every responsibility that his late wife had once carried. In his spare time, he exercised with his son, played baseball, and went on outings together, things he believed Naimazi would have wanted most. By 2009, Hang Ping was 10 years old. He had grown accustomed to cameras and public attention, accompanying his father to train stations, plazas, and crowded areas to distribute flyers seeking information about the case. Gao Yuwu explained that he did not want people to pity his son, nor did he want Hang Ping to believe that poor academic performance or hardship was inevitable simply because he had lost his mother. On the personal information forms he submitted each year in elementary school, Hang Ping wrote, "My mother was murdered. The case remains unsolved. I ask that I not be bullied or discriminated against because of this." To ensure his son never felt isolated or singled out, Gao Yuwu attended every parent-teacher meeting and school event he possibly could. Sometimes he took so much time off work that he felt guilty toward his employer, but whenever it came to his child, he slipped out anyway. Once, during a school sports day, he rushed straight from work without changing clothes and arrived in his business suit. Gao Yuwu admitted that his wish was simple: not to be treated as a special case. He believed that giving up would mean betraying Naimazi's memory. Families of victims, he said, should strive to live positively and energetically. If a wife's death destroyed the rest of the family as well, that would be the greatest injustice of all. Under his father's care, Hang Ping matured quickly. His father became his role model, teaching him to face life head-on. Hang Ping never avoided speaking about his mother's murder. He accompanied his father to public places, learned to face cameras and strangers' gazes. Few people understood the pressure such a childhood placed on him. Gao Yuwu recalled that Hang Ping never complained about being bullied at school. At home, he played video games loudly with neighborhood friends, seemingly carefree. Later, father and son visited Tokyo Disneyland together, the same place the family of 3 had once gone before the tragedy. Hang Ping played happily among other families. He may have wished his mother were there, but he never said so aloud. In interviews, Hang Ping said that from as early as he could remember, his father told him about what happened to his mother almost every year. He said, "When I woke up, my mother was already gone. My father took me to the zoo and the arcade. Of course, having a mother would be better. Most people have both parents, so I do feel some regret. But I've lived a normal life. I got used to not having a mother, and I'm okay." Day after day, year after year, as Hang Ping grew up, Gao Yuwu's hairline receded and his black hair turned grey. What never changed was his determination to find the killer. He had lost count of how many times he unlocked the apartment door, a door that held both his deepest sorrow and his greatest hope. He had faced cameras and reporters countless times, retelling the events of that day again and again. Even after repeating the story hundreds of times, whenever he recalled scrubbing his wife's blood from the walls, his eyes would still fill with tears. The anger, pain, and helplessness inside him felt like a thorn embedded deep in his flesh, unseen, untouchable, yet tormenting him day and night. At times, he wondered whether it all had any meaning, whether he should finally let go and move on. But whenever he saw his wife's belongings or her smile, his resolve reignited. Giving up would be unfair to Naimazi and to the child who had lived through it all. So, he continued. He gave interviews. He printed new flyers. He went with his son to stations, plazas, and shopping centers. Every flyer he handed out was a fragment of hope. He believed that only by persisting could the truth one day come to light. From the outset, the police investigation struggled. After the murder, investigators returned to the scene countless times, searching for any possible lead. Based on all available evidence, police concluded that although there were clear signs of a violent struggle in the kitchen, no drawers or closets had been searched, and no valuables were missing. Robbery was therefore ruled out. If the motive was not financial, then personal animosity became the primary working theory. However, an extensive review of Naimezi's social relationships revealed no known conflicts or enemies.
The most significant lead came from 2 eyewitnesses. By canvassing the area near the park on the day of the crime, police located 2 people who reported seeing a suspicious individual. One witness saw the suspect near Dosei Park, while the other saw her near Seitokuji Temple, adjacent to the park. Both described the same person, a middle-aged woman, approximately 40 to 50 years old, around 160 centimeters tall, with black, wavy, permed hair reaching about shoulder length. What drew their attention was her behavior. She was moving hurriedly, and her left hand was clearly injured, which she supported with her right hand as she walked. Based on these accounts, police produced a composite sketch of the suspect. Investigators then combined this with the presumed escape route and conducted door-to-door inquiries along the path. Despite these efforts, no new leads emerged. As detectives repeatedly retraced the route, they noticed that although it was somewhat indirect, it had lighter pedestrian and vehicle traffic. This led them to suspect that the perpetrator may have scouted the area in advance and planned an escape route, a conclusion that aligned with the fact that the murder weapon was never found. The crime appeared to be premeditated. The question remained, who was this person? In spousal homicide cases, the husband is often the first suspect. But in this case, Gao Yuwu was quickly ruled out. He had no motive, the marriage was stable and happy, relations with in-laws were good, and there were no financial pressures. He had purchased a car and a home, but had not taken out a life insurance policy on his wife. On the day of the murder, he was at work with a solid alibi. Moreover, blood type and DNA evidence at the scene indicated that the perpetrator was female. Because Gao Yuwu had been married before, police also investigated his ex-wife. She likewise had no motive and a verified alibi. Investigators even questioned every resident in the building, including the close friend on the 3rd floor. All were eliminated. Although the case gradually went cold, Gao Yuwu never gave up. In 2009, he joined a Victims' Families Association and became actively involved in advocacy, particularly opposing Japan's statute of limitations for murder, which at the time was 25 years. Before 2004, the limitation had been just 15 years. After a notorious killer surrendered in 2004 and escaped punishment due to the expired statute, public outrage erupted nationwide. The government extended the limit to 25 years, but families, including Gao Yuwu, continued to protest. Finally, on April 27, 2010, Japan's National Diet passed a landmark amendment abolishing the statute of limitations for murder entirely, a historic reform that restored hope to many families, including Gao Yuwu's. Even so, the Naimezi case saw no breakthrough. By 2011, Hang Ping was 12 years old, already able to outrun his father and beat him at card games. In 2014, at age 15 and now a high school sophomore, he showed a maturity beyond his years during interviews marking the 15th anniversary of the crime. In April 2015, Aichi Prefectural Police publicly released the suspect's composite sketch and a sample of the women's shoe inferred from footprints at the scene, asking the public for information. That same year, 60-year-old Gao Yuwu retired. Even after the rent was reduced from 90,000 to 70,000 yen per month, it remained a heavy burden on a pension. In February 2020, the National Police Agency designated the case as a special reward investigation, offering up to 3 million yen for decisive information. By 2024, Hang Ping was 27 years old. On November 11th, 2 days before the anniversary of his mother's death, he got married. By coincidence,
his wife was the daughter of one of Naimezi's close friends. For Hang Ping, this happiness felt like a blessing his mother had sent from above.
2 days later, on November 13, 2024, the 25th anniversary of the murder, the case remained unsolved. As always, Gao Yuwu stood distributing flyers. At a press conference, he said, "I believe the killer is afraid of these reports. If I cry, they would be happy. So I show them that I am strong. In my heart, I say to the killer, you deserve this. If you thought killing Naimezi would destroy our family and trap me in despair, your plan will never succeed. Her DNA is still in that apartment. We will make you live in fear, never knowing when you will be caught." Unbeknownst to the public, the investigation had already taken a decisive turn 7 months earlier. In April 2024, an unexpected visit shattered Gao Yuwu's quiet retirement. The visitor was a detective from the 1st Investigation Division's Special Cold Case Unit, nearly 50 years old, with a shaved head, short stature, and a solid build. Introducing himself, the detective said plainly, "If I'm here, this case will be solved." Over the next year, he proved it. Unlike previous investigators, he visited every 1 or 2 months, each time bringing thick files and a list of suspects. He stated candidly that the true perpetrator was almost certainly a woman, and that she was among the remaining suspects. Gao Yuwu's task, he said, was to help cross names off the list, one by one. This detective adopted a radically different approach. Instead of focusing solely on Naimezi's relationships, he shifted the investigation to Gao Yuwu's own past. Gao was asked to recall every woman he had ever known, from childhood through the time of the crime. Police reviewed old New Year's cards, company rosters, high school classmates, and club membership lists. When the detective took over, prior teams had already narrowed the suspect pool from 5,000 to a few hundred. In 2024, he re-examined these individuals, prioritizing those whose DNA had never been collected or who had not been thoroughly questioned. Within 1 year, a prime suspect emerged. In early 2025, the detective reviewed Gao Yuwu's high school classmates, including members of the Soft Tennis Club. Cross-referencing alumni lists with the remaining suspects, one name stood out: Yamaguchi Kumiko. In August 2025, police questioned her twice and requested a voluntary DNA sample. She refused both times, immediately elevating her status as a key suspect. By then, married with children, she now went by Anpuku Kumiko. Born in 1956, Anpuku was the eldest child in her family and, like Gao Yuwu, a Nagoya native. They had attended the same high school and both belonged to the Soft Tennis Club. Gao Yuwu recalled that he barely remembered her face, but clearly remembered receiving love letters and chocolate from her on Valentine's Day in his 2nd and 3rd years of high school. He had gently rejected her as he was interested in one of her close friends. After graduation, Gao entered a private university, while Anpuku failed her entrance exams, repeated a year, and later enrolled in a public university. Despite the distance, she continued to pursue him, even traveling nearly 2 hours by train to watch his matches. On one occasion, after waiting hours for him, Gao took her to a cafe and clearly told her he could not accept her feelings. She broke down crying. After 1975, she disappeared from his life. They did not meet again until June 1999, 5 months before the murder, at a high school reunion. They spoke briefly. There was no argument, nothing overtly suspicious. Further investigation revealed that Anpuku's husband was a successful corporate executive. They had 3 children, but their eldest daughter had died of a serious blood disease years earlier. Neighbors said Anpuku was harshly blamed by her family after the loss and became deeply depressed. In 1994, she and her husband moved into an apartment with their 2 sons. In 1999, she worked as an office employee at a household goods company in Nagoya. Years later, the family moved again, ending up just 2 kilometers from Gao Yuwu's home. Given the accumulated evidence and her refusal to provide DNA, police intensified their investigation. Then, on October 30th, 2025, Anpuku Kumiko walked into the police station on her own. She agreed to provide a DNA sample and confessed to murdering Naimezi 26 years earlier. On October 31st, the DNA results confirmed a perfect match with the blood found at the crime scene.
本日発生から約26年の時を経て、被疑者を殺人罪で通常逮捕いたしました。長期にわたり多数の捜査員が従事してまいりました。その地道な捜査の労苦に敬意を表すとともに、今後も事件の全容解明に向け、一層捜査を進めてまいります。
At 7 p.m., during the evening news, Gao Yuwu finally saw the scene he had dreamed of for 26 long years. Standing before a crowd of reporters, he put on a suit. After decades of endurance, his emotions surged, too complex to name. He fought back tears, struggling to maintain his composure and dignity, forcing himself to appear strong. He did not want to cry. But this moment had taken far too long to arrive.
知人が一緒にお酒飲んで祝ってくれたんで、もう本当にみんなに優しくしてもらってありがたいです。
He said, "I've already told Naimezi that the killer has been arrested, but I never imagined the killer would be someone I knew. I feel I owe Naimezi and Hang Ping an apology." When speaking to reporters, Gao Yuwu mentioned that at the alumni reunion years earlier, in the contact information section, he had written only his family home address, not the address of the apartment where he lived with Naimezi. He said he did not know how Anpuku had obtained his home address. "I didn't have Anpuku's contact information. I didn't know her phone number or where she lived. When I heard she was the killer, I was shocked and completely baffled. I never dreamed she could do something so inhumane." Shortly after the 1999 murder, police had already asked Gao Yuwu to carefully recall all co-workers, classmates, club members, and friends. Detectives also conducted broad screening based on the rosters of the clubs Gao had belonged to. In Gao's eyes, everyone from those clubs was innocent. He could not imagine any connection between Yamaguchi Kumiko and the case. As a result, Yamaguchi was never a focus. She was merely one of roughly 5,000 potential suspects. By the time Anpuku Kumiko was arrested, she was 69 years old. Over the 26 years since the crime, she had not undergone cosmetic surgery or attempted to disguise herself. Neighbors said she rarely participated in local activities, leading investigators to believe she had tried to avoid drawing attention. During questioning, Anpuku told police that for 26 years before her arrest, she lived in constant anxiety. "I didn't even dare to read newspaper reports about the case. As the anniversary approached each year, I became more anxious and depressed. I have family and relatives. I didn't want to trouble them, and I didn't want to be arrested. When the police came in August, I was already prepared to be taken in. I feel sorry for the victim." Despite these statements on the day of her arrest, in the following weeks, Anpuku exercised her right to remain silent, refusing to answer questions or disclose her motive. While she would not speak, journalists learned more from neighbors. An elderly resident who lived near the apartment Anpuku occupied from 1994 said, "I moved into the neighboring unit in 2005. Anpuku had been living there since the apartment was first occupied. She had a family, a husband and sons. When I moved in, she greeted me politely and thanked me. She seemed kind." The resident added that Anpuku's husband traveled frequently and was rarely home. She would sometimes say, "My husband has been away on business for a long time," and occasionally brought souvenir snacks, saying they were gifts her husband had brought back. Her sons appeared to be studying far away, visiting only occasionally. Still, something felt strange. The resident never saw the family together, not even the couple. They always appeared separately. This account matched that of another neighbor in Minato Ward, who said Anpuku herself was rarely seen and was never observed with her family. Most of the time, only her husband appeared, handling neighborhood matters, school meetings, and community activities. Many neighbors did not even realize a woman lived there. A few who had brief conversations described her as polite. One neighbor, admiring the flowers blooming beautifully in her garden, praised them. Anpuku smiled and replied, "Thank you. They belong to my mother. I cherish them." She even offered to give some flowers. When the neighbor declined, she responded courteously, "That's a pity." When asked whether Anpuku resembled the suspect photo released by police, the neighbor said her smile was strikingly similar. This case is now considered one of the longest-running cold cases solved in recent Japanese history. For 26 years, Gao Yuwu worked tirelessly, giving interviews, distributing flyers,
and refusing to give up the apartment where the murder occurred, thereby preserving critical physical evidence. By the time the case was solved in 2025, the rent alone had cost him 22 million yen. In hindsight, that commitment proved decisive. The preserved DNA, sustained media attention, and relentless outreach kept public awareness alive, placing immense psychological pressure on Anpuku. The arrival of the shaved-head detective and repeated questioning ultimately became the final straw. Although Anpuku has not stated her motive, many believe it centered on Gao Yuwu. Online commentators have suggested that people who appear quiet and reserved may be suppressing intense emotions. What began as sincere affection may have gradually warped into an unhealthy obsession, an ambivalent mix of love and hatred that can fuel stalking behavior. It is possible that Anpuku had been observing and collecting information about Gao since high school and university, while he remained unaware. After learning at the alumni reunion that Gao was married, she may have wanted to see the woman he chose. Her long-standing pattern of surveillance likely intensified. Over time, she became fixated on Naimizi, the source of Gao's happiness, and jealousy hardened into hatred. She prepared tools, planned an escape route, and even purchased probiotic drinks to lure the door open, perhaps claiming they were a gift for the child. Aichi Prefectural Police stated that they are continuing to investigate Anpuku's family environment and background to clarify her motive. For Gao Yuwu and his son Hang Ping, the mountain that had weighed on their hearts for 26 years has finally been lifted. The apartment where the crime occurred feels frozen in time, forever stopped at November 13th, 1999, holding both the family's happiest memories and the horrors of that day. Gao Yuwu said he will continue paying the rent until the trial concludes, hoping that day will not be far off. As for today's story, what do you think about Anpuku Kumiko? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.